Hi, I'm director Arthur Egeli. I directed Murder on the Cape. I'm here on Hellblazer Biz with Chris Gordon.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, my listeners and viewers wherever you are in the world right now. Welcome to Hellblazer Biz with your host, as always, me, Chris Gordon. I'm sorry, I can't change that. Hope you're all well. I appreciate all your support as always. This week is another fantastic guest. This gentleman has just released his new film, which he has written and directed, and it's called Murder on the Cape, which is based on the true story of the New York fashion writer Christa Worthington, who had an affair with a married fisherman while spending a winter holiday in Cape Cod. She returned 2 years later with his child to rekindle their love, and when she's found murdered, a mystery unfolds within the tight-knit community which sheds doubt on the prime suspect's guilt. The film stars Jade Harlow, Josh Walther, Chris Lazaro, Heather Egeli, and Tim Mizoradze. Without further ado, I introduce to you Arthur Egeli. Everyone, I am here with Arthur Egeli, the director and writer of Murder on the Cape, and it's my privilege to talk to you here as you are actually on location, you said, as we've just been talking about, of the film, on a very nice beach, but a very windy day.
Thank you. Here we are. This is this is the waterfront right in front of Elizabeth's house. That was the scene of their romance and the ultimate murder. It's right over there. I'm just going to swing over. You can see it. It's right up there. That's it in the center.
Wow.
Anyway, it actually would have been 2 years ago, almost today, that we started shooting on film.
All right. Okay. That's brilliant. I mean, I actually remember seeing the story of the Murder on the Cape. It's about, obviously you're going into it. It's Christa Worthington. She was basically a 46-year-old fashion writer. She was found stabbed to death. That's what the whole film's about. And I know you changed characters obviously in there for reasons which are obvious reasons. You changed the slight story around there. But I actually remember seeing it. I'm sure back 2002, wasn't it? It happened. It was about 15 years ago.
Yeah, 15 years ago. It was a big story at the time. I mean, I was actually living in Los Angeles, and I turned my TV on, and this local character I had known, Tony Jacket, was on this news magazine, and he looked distraught, and I was like, why is he on TV from Provincetown? And it turned out that Tony, of course, at that point was one of the prime suspects.
Yeah.
And he had fathered her child, and out of wedlock, and the story goes on from there.
Fantastic. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm in the UK, and I vaguely can remember the story being on there because it was quite a sensation, and obviously, especially with poor Ava. She was 2 years old at the time, and she was found. She'd been there for 2 days, found with her mother. So I think that's what hit me and what stood out for me is the story. Obviously when I was reading it, and took my attention from everything else that was going on. It was like so it was known over in the UK too.
That part of the story, even to this day, is has a lot of mystery to it because it appeared as if not only was her mother killed and she left there alive, but it seemed like someone maybe even cared for her during those 2 days.
No.
And so there was a lot of mystery surrounding that whole thing. And if you live here like I do now, I've lived here for 4 years. I mean, no one believes they ever arrested the right person, and no one is consistent on their version of events. And I saw him, and I saw him, and I saw a truck go up there, and she always hung out with this person, and no one really even now, unfortunately, buys the scenario that oppositely convicted a man for the crime.
Wow. That's actually quite well. It is very, very poignant, in the fact that how stories can change, and in something 15 years old is still. I mean, it's still so ripe in everyone's memories and in conversations.
One of the things people we used to say was, they painted her as this kind of, woman who liked to date a lot and see a lot of men, who was interested in men, and from a Cape Cod point of view, that may have been true, but from my point of view, living in a city like Pasadena or New York, she was just a normal woman looking for a partner.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say that someone dated 6 or 8 people in 1 year was philandering. I mean, but I guess on Cape Cod you might.
Well, yeah. If you're looking at small towns it can be seen that way. Definitely. Out of all the murder, I know this is going to sound a strange question, but out of all the murders, all the murders and the stories that are out there, what drew you to this one in particular? What was it that inspired you to write about this particular story?
It's this story is it's so unique because, I guess maybe not unique is the wrong word, but almost everyone in the story was on a collision course from the get-go for disaster. And I say that your romantic story is, lonely woman comes to the beach and meets the man of her dreams, and he's tough and handsome and has a physical job and, happily ever after. This is the nightmare version of that movie.
Right.
And it seemed like from the beginning, and the thing is that everyone's weaknesses led to their demise in a way. I mean, Tony was a handsome, charismatic guy, and women loved him, and Christa was, she was a very witty, smart, well-traveled. She was an attractive woman, and it just seemed like it was meant to be. And on the other hand, it was, along the way, hearts were going to be broken. And the cool thing about it was that out of all this, this miracle child appeared. And then that, in a way, the whole story turns.
Yeah.
This story's had so many different acts, one acts in a way, they have an affair. They're going to break it off, but she's pregnant. But don't worry, she's going to leave town. She's never coming back. And then she comes back. And then she wants insurance from Tony. Tony has to tell his wife, and is his wife going to leave him? And she doesn't.
Right.
Which is another turn. You think that his marriage was over, but it was, in a way, she forgave him, and she forgave the child for being there.
Yeah.
It just has it's a heartbreaking story all around.
It does sound that way. I mean, I did actually read that. I think Tony had said that he likes the way his wife has become friends, and I think at the time, I think was it with Christa? She become friends with Christa at the time as well. They all
at the time
they kind of got along.
They started towards the end. The child started spending time at Tony's house, and Tony's family kind of welcomed her in, and I think that was kind of, in a way, disconcerting to Christa, because I don't think she was from that kind of family. That they were a very open Portuguese family, Tony's family, and they kind of faced reality the way it was. Yeah, and without any preconceived notions, they were going to get through it. And his wife was I think his wife in the end thought, why should I just let my husband's stupidity affect what's going to happen now?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why Christa would think that, would be a bit strange. It does sound, it's not something that you'd spring to mind as a normal situation when you found your husband's been having an affair and things. So, yeah, I can see that. What kind of research is involved then? Because it's basing a film on real life events as opposed to one, obviously that's just a sci-fi or something like that. What kind of research is involved in that? Because obviously you've got I suppose there's sensitivities that you take into account.
Well, first, it's a lot easier to write a film just out of your head. Just the imagination. But when you base a story on real events, it does keep you honest in a certain way, where you've got to discover, like, okay, so and so did this. Why did they do this? Why did they act this way? Which was always what was wrong to me. What rang untrue about the conviction. It's like I couldn't write that scenario. Like, why would someone be angry enough to kill this beautiful young woman? And why, the whys of it. That's what has to be solved in a screenplay, because you have to tell the actors what they're going to do. Why are you doing this? They want to know. And then, but there are some sensitivities. I mean, since I live here, I just wanted to, in a way, like, I'm telling a story of a man, of course, made a mistake and had an affair, and but in a way, I wanted to honor the memory of Christa Worthington.
Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't going to, like, as we did doing researching, like, a lot of the research you'd find was it was painted after the fact. It was like the survivors are telling the story to protect their own reputations.
Yeah.
So of course it made a lot of sense to call her a loose woman. Wasn't my fault. Like,
yeah.
she brought it on, and it's like, no. That was, she's like any other woman. This, takes two to tango.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then, also in the end, one day their child will see this movie, and I didn't want to say anything that wasn't true, that I didn't think was true in my heart. Maybe it wasn't true. Maybe this didn't happen exactly, but the gist of it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, because Ava must be 17-ish now,
18 now.
Something like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's something that I mean, have you talked to Ava? How and
I see her. I haven't talked to her. I've met her a handful of times, but I've never talked to her. I do talk to her father, Tony Jackett. I see him a lot.
Yeah.
He works in town here, so I see him all the time.
All right, excellent. And obviously, the fact that you're there is the support's there from them as well to have the story told.
Yeah, it was. Tony was supportive all along. I feel like, in a way, like, Tony definitely got the short end of the stick after this crime. It seemed like everybody was writing books and making money off their participation and everything, and Tony was fighting for custody of his daughter.
Yeah.
Which he didn't get. He actually ran out of money, and had to, like, almost throw in the towel. And custody of his own daughter went to a stranger that was in the will. It's almost like another movie.
Yeah, I did read that. Yeah.
Film. People ask me about the end of my film, and I don't want to give it up here because I could watch the film. But to me, the end of my movie is symbolic of what happened. What happened was, in the end, they threw away the key. And it does leave a kind of empty feeling in you when you follow the real story, like somehow unsatisfied what really happened.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we talked earlier about that as well. It's not being satisfied, and with the gentleman who was actually arrested for it's Chris McCowan, wasn't it? Christopher McCowan.
Christopher McCowan. Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about, obviously, talking about sensitivities, and we would, and getting the film made because who Christopher McCowan was, and how things have come to light since. Now he's African American. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah. So and obviously,
correct, yeah.
So yeah, and like we were just talking about there, the difficulty that it must have been to try and make a film in current climate, which is accurately telling the truth, because his fingers just unfortunately pointed in that direction. Is that, or am I?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, when you watch my film, you're not going to see an African American in the film. So, you're going to be asking me, like, why is there no African American in film? And I have two answers to that. One is, what if he didn't do it? And if he did do it, which character in there do you think is Christopher McCowan? Who do you think is my substitution for Christopher McCowan?
Yeah.
And if you identify him, think to yourself, is that the monster that they painted him as? Is that guy in the film who you're learning the story of and having sympathy for, is he the monster that they have in jail now? there's still a lot of loose ends in this,
Mm-hmm.
in the case. And the fact was is that there's a reason why it took 2 years for them to say, "Oh my God, there's an African American in this story. We better arrest him."
Mm. Yeah, I know what you. Yeah, so I'm not. You say I didn't realize. Sorry, because I say apologies. That's my fault because I haven't seen watched
No
that.
problem. No
But how
problem.
you've changed that around. But it's. I'm glad. It's good to see that you have changed that, and for those reasons for it as well, because it's about the character and the people themselves. And like you say, there are so many people who are being proved innocent now of crimes because they were just had. It was just there were scapegoats at the time.
Yeah.
It was just like it's the easy option. We need to close this case. We'll just put it on you. And like you say, 2 years later, they suddenly find the DNA sample. And it's like, really? After that,
Right.
I've seen that quite a few times. Where I think it's been over here. There's been cases where suddenly, they found DNA samples after so many years, and I mean, in some cases, it's actually exonerated the person who's just spent 20 odd years in prison for it because
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of. I'm probably going on the record here. There, in some cases, I think I'm not necessarily saying it's this one, but there
Oh, the
are
same.
lots of
Same thing
corruption
here.
going on. That things
The
get
same thing here.
fabricated.
People, when someone's killed like this, and it's a gruesome crime, and it's like seems like the most innocent of people are involved, and it's not like this wasn't like a gang crime or people had to face off with the police. This
Hmm.
was like a brutal murder, um, and so people want justice, and they're like, and here in Cape Cod, I mean, in this area, there's probably been, I'd say, since then, maybe one other murder, maybe
Hmm.
two, you know, whereas they're having one a day in Chicago,
Yeah,
so and it's like people come here to relax and dream and go to the beach, and um, they don't expect someone to come into their house and kill them with a steak knife.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. And I mean, and because of that, again, that's probably another reason why this case is still so fresh and so talked about. Is because it's such a rare occurrence in that town that
Yeah,
it's it was stood
the
out so much.
the crimes we have here are like it's like you don't pick up your dog's poop, that's that's a big crime here.
Yeah.
Pick up the poop.
Yeah. That sounds like an idyllic place to live, to be fair. Oh dear. Yeah, yeah. We have them. We have that kind of thing around ours as well, but we do have the more
I'm
serious
going to swing
crime.
the camera right here. See, this is low tide right now, so you see the tide's out like
Yeah.
that. Like on the first day of shooting, our cameraman came from Texas,
Mhm.
and I don't think he knew what tides were. And then $4 or $5 later, oh my God, the water's all the way up to the house. And I'm like, does it every day. Don't worry.
Oh dear. Bless. That's the thing. See, it's hard for someone in the UK to understand. I think, and outside how big the states is, because you can grow up in somewhere like Texas your entire life and never see the ocean,
Yeah,
because and
he may have seen the ocean. He probably even he probably even had seen the ocean, but the tides had never occurred to him.
yeah.
It's just like you know, yeah,
Yeah, and they can be quite vicious as well. I mean, and speaking about that, because obviously the film was shot entirely in Provincetown, as we've talked about, and you've given me you've given a very nice little quick view of the background there. What was the hardest thing filming everything on location, and being the fact that this is your home as well?
well, the town was pretty open to it. We shot, some great locations all around town.
Hmm.
The most sensitive thing is that, you know, I rent my house from my landlord,
Mm.
and so Krista's house became my landlord's house, and I'm gonna just swing over, and that's the house right
Yeah.
there. See that house right over there?
Hmm.
That was the Krista's house,
Right.
and it's a beautiful house inside. And film crews just, they're just not that careful.
Oh.
So I was the entire time I was shooting, I was in deathly fear that they're going to damage something, And David Mayo,
Hmm.
he's like one of those families that's been here forever, an
Yeah.
English family. They were whalers,
All
I
right.
mean, there's a
Okay.
Coast Guard cutter. It's a Coast Guard cutter named after his great grandfather, who saved 6 guys off a wreck here.
Yeah.
So, so I'm like, okay, don't touch that harpoon that was given to him by, somebody, But anyway, that was
Yeah.
the biggest problem.
Wow.
Everything else was your typical low budget deal.
Mhm.
It was a very low budget film, not enough lights, not enough, anything.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's hard to go wrong here. It's a really picturesque town. I'm going to show you, turn it around again. I'll show you over there, that tower in the distance.
Yeah.
See the tower?
I can. Yeah. Oh, just to the right there.
Yeah, that's the Pilgrim Monument, because this is where the Pilgrims first landed.
Wow.
And they actually buried their dead in Provincetown, but they didn't think it was a suitable place to live. So they looked around, finally found Plymouth, where, but back in Europe, in England, it's probably not a big deal, it's just a minor thing. But here it's like, the Pilgrims landed, and we're having a celebration, 2020, the 400-year celebration, the Pilgrims coming. And,
yeah. That was the start of the end for when you started kicking us out.
That's right. That's right. Don't forget.
No, it's fantastic, and I mean, for history, for the United States of America history, is actually very, very poignant and very, very powerful images that you do get evoked from that, especially with the tower where you say everyone's buried there. The Pilgrims, the original Pilgrims, were buried, or the dead Pilgrims, obviously. They wouldn't be buried alive.
It also goes back to another issue here too, because in a way, like the English people, English heritage people like Mayo here, and the whalers, they kind of looked down at the Portuguese who came later. The Portuguese came more around 1890s,
right?
And they were more like, your hardworking fishermen.
Yeah.
And even to this day, there's like it's still gone away, but there's still like this kind of like people love to claim their Plymouth heritage from the Pilgrims, And of course, if you're Portuguese, you didn't come on the Mayflower. Or if your last name's Egeli, you didn't come on the Mayflower either. That's my last name.
Yeah.
So I mean, so in a way, like when you go to the case, and we're talking about the case, Christa Worthington having an affair with Tony Jacket with just crossed all lines in a way, and then it was so strong that her father who was like a judge or attorney general here, just made it impossible for the custody of that daughter to go to Tony Jacket's family. Yeah, and that was like the first huge injustice I thought that came out of this. I mean, it kept going, things happening to people. I mean, they couldn't find a suspect, so they decided they were going to take the DNA of every living human being in the area.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so if he killed her, why would he give you his DNA? Whatever.
Yeah, true. Like you say, I think there was quite a few open ends, which are still, which is obviously why you've done the film, which is a great, to try and bring it back to people's attention that there are still, this is it's a difficult case, and there are some decisions and judgments which I think should be, maybe looked at again.
Yeah,
definitely,
absolutely.
Cool. I mean, you've had the premiere for your film was at the Boston Film Festival as well.
Yeah, it was on the spring. So.
Yeah, it was quite early this year. So how did that feel? Because obviously that's.
Well, it's, to tell you the truth, I mean, independent filmmakers who are watching this will understand this, but like, you're coming down to the wire. Your film's not done. You need more money to finish. You don't know what the hell you're going to do. It's like, all these little expenses are hitting you. And then you're accepted into a major film festival.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, investors show up. Out of the woodwork, I got the rest of the money. So it was like this. And then, so at the festival, we debuted our finished film. And of course, I just reviewed the print like probably the 3 days before, so I was hoping it made sense, hoping it was in sync, hoping it we actually had a movie, and so it went well. It was packed and great questions, and we actually the second miracle was like, within a week we had a deal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And
So, and I've been working on the film since 2003. So, 14 years working on it off and on, and anyway. And then when you're filming this film too, it's like you're filming like, and also filmmakers will understand this. Like, there's always a point when you're making a movie where you just got to go ahead and make it. If you've got $10 or you got 10 million, you got to go forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you look like the guy who's always talking about films and never makes them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of my questions. Is I've got from a friend of mine called Egeli in France, and she's started out. She's written her own feature, and she would just like to see what kind of advice you would be able to give someone who is just starting out with their first. It's a 10-minute short to begin with, that's what she's got, and then she obviously wants to build up. So, what kind of advice could you give her just starting out?
Well, starting out
than
is
you have to.
You're a filmmaker. You got to make films, and a lot of people talk about making films and they don't ever make them, and because it's really tough. I mean, there's like you're making a film and there's a million places you can fall down and stumble and not make it and get discouraged and this and that. But she's doing it right. I mean, a 10-minute film, you can take that and cut a little teaser out of it and show it to your prospective investors. And, if you can touch them in some way, tap into their pathos, they'll say, yeah, I'd like to see that movie, and they'll contribute towards it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately it may, destroy your life for a while, but you'll come back. It's like, it's one of those things. It's like, to me, it's the ultimate art form, making movies. You're doing everything visually, story, music, sound. And unfortunately, those all cost money and effort.
Oh, yes.
So,
Yeah, they do indeed. I mean, it's kind of good advice. So with this show that I'm doing as well, because I want to take this to TV and networks as well. And one of the ideas you've actually just confirmed one of the ideas that I'd had with it, about getting clips, like you say, little teasers. And I was going to try and get clips from different interviews and just sort of pitch it like that. So yeah, but it's putting the effort in and the hard work behind it, and I think
it is.
Yeah, and some people can think it's a really easy thing to do, but it's not. It's like you say, yours. You're working on yours for 14 years, to get the realization through, and so it's a lot of hard work and life.
Yeah,
put
and
into
the thing
it.
is that, in the meantime, your kid expects you to take him to a soccer game, even if you're shooting.
Yeah.
And you should. Sorry, I mean, it was funny because in my film, it used to be the crew was older than me. Now the crews is younger than me because I'm getting older now. And I said, we can't start shooting till 11. Well, why not? And I gotta go to a soccer game. And they were like, oh, maybe that's a life advice.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No matter what, family always comes first.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones who look after you when you get.
True. You hope.
Yeah. Is there anything you've learned whilst filming Murder on the Cape that you've noted that perhaps for the next film that you do you could improve on?
Well, it's I feel like I'm hoping that so I have to say this in the right way. You just want a little more time to film, and I don't want to criticize my own film, but
well, no, it's not meant to be criticizing your own film, but obviously everyone learns from their experiences.
But I would have, probably shot another 3 days so I had more choices, and what to edit and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and it's like, as you get better, as you get older, I mean, as you get more experience, you get more experience at casting and choosing things, and it's so funny when you're looking at an actor, you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, he's so talented, right? He's so good.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you're thinking, will he wake up at 7 a.m. every day and come to the set fresh? Will he be reliable? Because when you're doing an independent film, I mean, you're just counting on everybody to show up and be reliable.
Yeah.
And And if one person in your crew is late, chronically late,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a day. That'll cost you a day of shooting every week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's you know, the simplest things. Um, over there, there's a fish schooling. I'm looking at right now. Fish are like, I'm going to walk over and show you if I can go to it. But it's low tide here, and the big fish are pushing the little fish into the shallows
Oh right.
because they're
Okay.
trying to eat them. And it's happening like right next to me. But I'll talk
Wow.
while I'm over there.
No, that'd be fantastic.
Anyway, but yeah, as course, everything. I'm going to go back to your question. Things I could
Mm-hmm.
improve on the next film. Everything. I want to have a better script. More famous actors. More equipment. You name it, I want it. But the fact is that, and this is my advice to filmmakers too, is you can't let any of that get in the way of making another film.
Yeah.
You got to get on to the next thing, and each time you learn and get better and better. It's because people always say to you like, you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have done this, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, when you make your movie, you can do that too.
Exactly.
Because if you made your movie, you wouldn't be giving me this line of bullshit. Because
Yeah.
I remember one time Kurosawa said that, they said to him like, well, the framing was really awkward in that battle scene. Why didn't you put the camera to the right? And he's like, yeah, well, there was a 10-story building there for one, and the film took place in 12 AD.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's why I didn't pan right.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yes, and that's actually been in a few historical films that's made those mistakes where they've had cars in the background. So yeah, you can see how much of a problem it could be. So no, you're right. And kind of moving on from that, then, who would you love to work with in your future film, actors and actresses wise? Who would be your ideal? I mean, there's probably loads, but
of course, I got the same guys as everybody. Russell Crowe, Sean Connery, Anthony Hopkins. I'll work with anyone.
Yeah.
We are working on my next project. We're already into it right now because I bought the rights to a play.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell you the story, it'll almost suggest cast to you. But Eugene O'Neill in 1920 made a play called Emperor Jones,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about a black guy in Haiti. It's his last day in office, and he's being deposed, and he's like, they're going to kill him. And he's like, they're chasing him through the jungle, pretty much, in this play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was the first time an African American got the lead in a Broadway play.
Wow.
Not a white actor wearing blackface.
Yeah.
It was the norm. If it was a serious role, you had a white actor wear blackface. So they had actually a real African American playing an African American part. It seems so strange now, but
Back in those days, that was a.
Well, in this play was the N-word about 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
As part of O'Neill's, what he thought was realistic dialogue. Well, Charles Gilpin, once they became a runaway hit, he did not want to say that word anymore.
Yeah.
He thought it was demeaning. And in the end, O'Neill fired him from the play.
Huh.
And Gilpin's great-great-granddaughter wrote a play about the behind the scenes of what happened. And that's the movie we're working on.
All right. Excellent.
So it's going to shoot in Provincetown here, and we're just developing it now. So, So I'm looking for that next, 30-something black actor who wants the best role you've ever seen. This is the best role you'll ever get. I mean, not ever get, but it's a great role.
Yeah. Fantastic. No, that'd be good. It sounds that does sound. It's another. Like Murder on the Cape, it's another true story that it's got so much emotion and so much story behind it, and the history as well, because like you say, back in those days, to have even employed an African American in a lead role was just not heard of. So
yeah, exactly, it was not heard of. He took it, and O'Neill took a chance. He was an experimental guy and was a leading edge, but then he would only go so far.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's a fantastic story. We're hopefully, we're just writing now, so hopefully we're shooting this spring.
Excellent. I can think of a few
Yeah.
names. Who'd probably be really good at that.
I mean, yeah, it's like I need somebody for O'Neill, and I need somebody for Charles Gilpin.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that'd be for, hopefully you'll get the people you need, because they'll. We shall, you just pass on and get from this film that you've done now, and it'll get the word will get out, and we'll see film with the people that you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Excellent. And kind of finally, to wrap this up from the question from my side of things, is where can we see Murder on the Cape? I know it's on video on demand. It's on Amazon and.
Yes, it's on Amazon, iTunes, Hulu, Fandango. It's actually in physical DVD. I think it's also on. It's under Vision Films, and so it's Amazon, iTunes, Hulu, Vudu, and Fandango. And there are others too. I can't remember, and they're going to kill me for remembering for you.
Vimeo, isn't it? Hang on, but I might be able to. I should be able to tell you right.
Also.
Yeah,
it's on Vimeo, and you can order a physical DVD from Amazon. Actually, the old style ones.
Exactly, and people can follow it on Facebook as well at facebook.com/CapeMovie.
Yep, it's on Facebook, and we give updates probably every day of what's going on, and it's going to be on Netflix exclusively starting in January.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a cracking deal for you as well.
Yes. That was a huge break for us. But yeah, they're going to have it for 18 months, and then after that, I'll go to syndication.
Brilliant. I mean, that's something about. I mean, as a filmmaker, as an off-the-cuff question, is the amount of online resources now is a fantastic thing for independent and movie makers, because you get so much more platform to be able to display your art.
You do, and it's like everybody is looking for content. So and it's the worst thing is the other edge is that everybody can comment on your film, which can be kind of discouraging. But hey, you take the good with the bad, So,
exactly. Yeah. I know what you mean there. Excellent. Is there anything? Before I just stop the recording, or carry on obviously and wrap up after. And before I stop the recording, anything you'd like to say to people who are watching and listening to this?
I'm Arthur Egeli. I made a movie called Murder on the Cape. Give it a shot. You won't be disappointed.
Thank you once again, Arthur. That's absolutely fantastic. Really interesting to hear about the film, and great scenery and background that you had while we did the interview. Fantastic location, and I'm looking forward to watching the film, and hope everybody else will go out and see it now as well. Thank you very much. This has been Chris Gordon on Hellblazer Biz with Arthur Egeli.